tell you what's in there.
Sugar.
How about a honey crisp apple?
Sugar.
That ought to tell you what's in there. But if you're in the apple section, grab some crab apples. One bite is going to tell you they're pretty doggone bitter. They have more of what you're actually looking for, which is the polyphenols. And these make a great addition to salad.
We're going to stop here, people. This is... I was at a gas station today looking for a healthy energy drink. I haven't put the video together yet. A Monster energy drink, one of those big cans, 81 grams of added sugar. And a NOS Energy, 51 grams of added sugar. When you see what that looks like, you look like Tony Montana about to have a party time. This is our sponsor of the night, Dr. Gundy. Speaking of digestive issues, everybody, this is caused by a potential toxin that's in all of our healthy food that scientists have been telling us to eat with a fraudulent food pyramid for the longest time. And this potential toxin causes digestive issues, according to Dr. Gundry, a world-renowned cardiologist. This is affecting millions of people nationwide. Warning signs include weight gain, fatigue, digestive discomfort, stiff joints, and even skin problems. Dr. Gundry explains all of these side effects that are mistaken sometimes for normal signs of aging. Oh yeah, my decrepit ankles and whatever. Check this out, by the way. Go watch the video. It is at gutcleanseprotocol.com/Viva. You watch the video. He explains what to eat, what to avoid, which foods are actually healthy, and which foods contain this hidden potential toxin. gutcleanseprotocol.com/Viva. The link is in the description. After years of research, Dr. Gundry has decided to release an informative video to the public, uninterrupted, showcasing exactly which foods you need to avoid. gutcleanseprotocol.com/Viva. Link in the description. And now, speaking also of governments being up to no good, people. Oh, lordy. Moderna scores federal funding for mRNA bird flu vaccine as pandemic fears grow. Does everybody know that Moderna never had a functioning product? It never had a product to market until the COVID pandemic. Well, you know this. America, pay attention. We are living in perilous times. Assassination attempts, coups seeking to take over our government, cybersecurity threats, and we're just heating up. Now, Forbes just put out an article that the government is handing out $176 million to Moderna to whip up, not in the Cool Whip, which has too much sugar, to whip up an mRNA bird flu vaccine. They're gearing up for the next big pandemic, or plandemic, depending on how you want to go about it. And we can't trust the establishment with our health any longer. We must take actions into our own hands now. I'm protecting my family with a contagion emergency kit from the Wellness Company, and now you can too if you're in America, not available in Canada. This kit's no joke. It's the frontline defense against whatever the government throws at us next. It comes packed with ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. We can now say these words because the government admits they might have been wrong. Z-Pack, Tamiflu, budesonide, along with a nebulizer, so you can rest easy knowing that your family has the emergency meds on hand, along with a guidebook for safe use. Every family in America needs these kits. It's like having an urgent care in the comfort of your own home. Go to twc.health/Viva. Get your emergency contagion kit there. Using code promo Viva gets you 30% off at checkout. Kits are only available in the USA. Get it? I was on with Dr. Drew last week, and I think everybody understands you need to have food, you need to have water, you need to have medications in case they have the next thing, which many people believe is surely coming because it's, what month is it? It's now September, people. September to October to November. We are 2 months out of the election. Check it out. Links are in the description, and that is it. Good evening, everybody. How goes the battle, as we say? Wait until Barnes gets here. We're going to start off with, the sponsors that keep this program going. Building the parallel economy, we're going to go over to Rumble as we typically do in about an hour. I should have made sure that we are live across all of the interplanes of the interwebs, which I think that we are. We are live on CommieTube. We are live on, I don't get ads on Rumble anymore because I subscribe to Rumble Premium. So I forego now the ads on Rumble while supporting the platform. I do not have YouTube Premium because I don't care about letting ads run. And I'm not giving YouTube that money there. YouTube demonetized my Viva Family channel, and I think it's just a mistake and not a big deal. I'm going to figure it out, or I'll work it out with them, because when I license videos, the licensing agency claims monetization sometimes of the videos, and I think YouTube thinks that I'm now recycling the licensing agency's videos and not vice versa. But they have proven themselves to be not businesses with which you cannot contract for business purposes and rely on for predictability. We got a show tonight, people. Okay, we're live across all the interplays of the interwebs, and I wanted to start. Now we're going to get into the fun stuff until Barnes gets here. You've heard the news. We're going to talk about the disastrous news coming out of the Middle East. The vapidity of the idiots that are governing us. I say we are being governed by evil idiots because they're not just evil and they're not just idiots. They're both. I posted this highlight from Kamala Harris's interview with Dana Bash, whatever the heck you want to pronounce it, last week. And I highlighted it at the time because it's just inanity, stupidity, incompetence. I know the body behavior panel, I think they looked at this and said, the way that she's looking at the ground while answering this question shows massive insecurity. I had put together the highlight, the splicing together of, we got to get a deal done, get a deal done. I want to let this play uninterrupted in its unedited glory of stupidity. Listen to this. This is Kamala Harris with her masterful, thoughtful, insightful solution to the Middle East problems. Get a deal done. They don't know what the hell it means. Listen to this.
We have got to get a deal done. We were in Doha. We have to get a deal done. This war must end. In the meantime, and we must get a deal that is about getting the hostages out. I've met with the families of the American hostages. Let's get the hostages out. Let's get the ceasefire done.
But no change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No, we have to get a deal done. Dana, we have to get a deal done. When you look at the significance of this to the families, to the people who are living in that region, a deal is not only the right thing to do to end this war, but will unlock so much of what must happen next. We have got to get
verbal diarrhea. There's no other way to describe it. We've got to get it. Dana, we've got to get it. What does that deal look like? Here's a deal that would work. Give nuclear weapons to Hamas and they'll give the hostages back. That's a deal. What is that? What would that deal look like, Kamala? Oh, I met with their families. Oh, okay, good for you. By the way, you met with them last week while Joe Biden's sitting there sunbathing at the beach twice in 1 week. Oh, but he's still hard at work with his phone. This news broke yesterday, and it makes these two idiots look like the most incompetent scoundrels on earth. I met with their families. Look at importance, self-proclaimed importance, narcissism. Met with the families. Get a deal done. Bring home these hostages. Hakeem Jeffries just took to Twitter, I don't know, a couple hours ago. Got to get the hostages home. It's going to be a little harder now to get the 6 murdered hostages home. Just say nothing. They don't know anything. They don't understand the complexities. They don't have any form of a plan. What we are witnessing right now is what happens in a world where you have a massive ship that is the United States, seemingly without a captain. There's no one in charge here, seemingly, and yet there are people pulling the strings from behind the curtains. It's imbecility is what it is. I don't know if that's the right word. They're imbeciles. They're imbeciles and they're liars. I was going to bed last night and I'm just pulling up classic clips. Where is it? I had it. Here, listen to this. Just like I listened to this entire speech that Tim Walz gave to the American Legion. This is in 2012. Listen to this.
When I talk to my constituents in southern Minnesota, I don't care if they're Republican, Independent, Democrat, it doesn't matter to them. When I tell them, when I was in Afghanistan, you know what our troops were worried about? They were worried about their families' health care and they were worried about their pensions. I said, do you think that's really what you want them to be worrying about? When their friends and colleagues are being shot on a daily basis, and yet at the end of the day, they have to worry about that. When I talk to my
constituents, can you imagine this guy is running with Kamala Harris, the woman who was at the helm of the Biden administration that had the catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan that led to 13 more military servicemen being murdered, killed as a result of their incompetence. When I was in Afghanistan, and I put out a tweet because I didn't know for certain if Tim Walz had ever gone to Afghanistan. Did Tim Walz go to Afghanistan? Well, it's very interesting. I mean, He claims to have gone to Afghanistan. When I was in Afghanistan. Now, steel manning all of this. At this American Legion, they had talked about Tim Walz and his visit overseas. Don't know exactly what that includes. That visit was 4 years before this speech. When someone says, I was in Afghanistan, I was in Iraq, I was in Vietnam or in Nam, it doesn't mean in passing. It doesn't mean on a vacation. It doesn't mean studying abroad. It doesn't mean on a congressional fact-finding tour to the extent that that's what it was. Tim Walz never went to Afghanistan in combat. He had never actually gone to combat. Not to poo-poo his 24 years of National Guard service. Good for him. He should be proud of that, which means that he shouldn't have to lie about what he didn't do. He gives this speech 4 years after this congressional visit to Afghanistan, and in front of the American Legion says, when I was in Afghanistan, you know what the troops were worried about? Also suggesting some form of control, leadership over these troops. What they were worried about? Their futures, health, etc. When I was in Afghanistan is not how you refer to a congressional visit over the course of several days. I don't know how many days it was that he was in Afghanistan. This is the same man also who talked about carrying weapons of war in war, who talked about psychological damage from having been in war, post-traumatic stress disorder from having been in combat. And then the fact finders or the fact checkers, the propaganda arm of the Democrat Party come out and say he was in Afghanistan. He went with a congressional hearing. And so it's technically true what he said. Fact check true. Taken out of context, this could sound like something other than what it was. He was just saying he went with a congressional hearing and to a congressional visit 4 years earlier, then gets up in front of veterans where they tout him as being the most military experienced member of government. And then he says, when I was in Afghanistan, everybody knows exactly what the hell he was implying, how the media would report that out of the context of the Legion. And then they try to say, no, it's an unfair attack. Don't attack a veteran. These are the people that are vying for political power of America right now. Cackling Kamala, who failed her way up, who was, is, and will always be a DEI hire, whether you like it or not, people. Hey, DEI is great. They make companies make DEI statements. You will have diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity is our strength, and that is why you will hire racial, religious, transgender, whatever minorities. It's a good thing. It's a good thing until you say, why is this incompetent nincompoop who failed her way up, and I'm being polite when I say failed her way up to VP. Why is she so incompetent, so stupid, can't put together a sentence? 43 days she had to prepare, and that was the rubbish answer. Got to get a deal done, Dana. We got to get a deal done. I'm shaking my camera. Here, in case you had any questions as to whether or not Kamala Harris was a DEI hire, she was hand-selected from their short list of DEI hires.
Let us turn now to CBS News political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. Ed, former Vice President Biden has for 3 months said his running mate will be a woman. Now, with recent events, is Biden under more pressure now to choose a woman of color?
Well, Major, he continues to face tremendous pressure to pick a woman of color, but CBS News has learned that his team continues to vet or look into the backgrounds of several women. Senators Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, Kamala Harris, and Tammy Duckworth, a paraplegic Iraq War veteran.
By the way, this was back in the day when they still thought Elizabeth Warren was a person of color, apparently. Bada bing, bada boom. I'm joking.
Governors Michelle Lujan Grisham of New Mexico and Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, Congresswoman Val Demings of Florida, Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, and former Obama National Security Advisor Susan Rice. Despite the recent headlines, Biden continues to insist he's looking for someone he'd be comfortable working with and who he believes is qualified for the job, and we're expecting an announcement by August 1st.
Let us turn now to CBS News.
Preferably a woman of color, and that's what he did with Ketanji Jackson Brown, who can't, it's funny, they can identify a woman of color until they're asked to define what a woman is. Can't do that either. Incompetence of the highest order, and it's only getting worse. Now, let me see something here. I was going to have a bit of a palate cleanse, but we're not going to do that. Let me see this one here.
You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom.
That's why I
whether
had
it's
to lie.
Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming
My record speaks for itself. That's why I have to continually lie about it and exaggerate my actual record.
to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools.
Just understand what he said there, by the way. This was in the tweet. It's okay when I lie if the reason for which I'm lying is sufficiently important to me. Obviously, these are serious issues. I speak like everyone. Well, no, most people don't lie, Tim. I speak especially passionately, i.e., I lie on issues that are children and guns. So I'm going to lie. I'm going to lie. I'm going to deceive when I think it's good for my political cause, as I did when I claimed to have carried weapons of war in war. Now, this is not the palate cleanse just yet. For those of you who missed it, I had Ivan Raiklin on last week, and it was amazing, and we're going to need a part 2. For those of you who aren't following what's going on in Brazil, we're going to talk about it tonight, but no need to play this video when Barnes gets on. I'll play it before he gets on, and you'll remember what it says. Tuesday night, apparently, there's going to be another Twitter Files. We don't know yet what's going to be in it, but this is the ad, and I dare say it looks good.
This is a public service announcement from the Secretary of Retribution to Mark Zuckerberg. You promoted all of the unsafe and ineffective products through your platform, and you still censor to this day.
You get the ability to share the information that you want with people. That's what the service is.
Mark, that doesn't give you amnesty, that little letter you sent to Jim Jordan.
Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, mother of all
This is a
Twitter
public
Files.
service announcement from the Secretary of
And that's the ad. So that's going to be Tuesday, and I think I'm going to pop on. I'll give everybody the link in the chat so you can go check into that. All righty, people, hold on. Link, bam, there. Link. Let's go to. Oh, I'm not yet in. Hold on, I don't have this opened here. Hold on. Hold up. Link. Give everybody the link. Do I hold? Oh, come on. Link, and then I'm going to put the thing up here. Bada bing, bada boom. Now, when Barnes gets here, I think I see him in the backdrop. We're going to have the ultimate palate cleanse right now. Going to thank our next and final 2 sponsors of the evening, everybody. Oh, Lordy. The real palate cleanse. Okay, guys, this is it. Get it, eat it, substitute out the sugar. We're focusing on health, by the way, because it's kind of the most important thing in your life. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything, to quote the villain from Princess Bride. Field of Greens, peeps. This almost never happens. I've shared this for my own. Oh. Hold on. I'm just going to distraction there. Field of Greens, by the way. People, I was at the store when I was looking at the Monster Energy drink, and it goes on silent now. At the store looking at the sugar, and it's not just the sugar in the sugar drinks. I was looking at the chemicals in the non-sugar drinks. You couldn't find one without sucralose, without aspartame, and it's just terrible. It's just terrible. And most people don't know this. They don't have control over their health. They don't have healthy habits. They sit there in the afternoon and say, I'm going to suck down an aspartame-filled Diet Coke, and it's just as bad for you as everything else. You're supposed to have 5 to 7 servings of raw fruits and vegetables a day, and most people don't have it. Field of Greens is what we call a desiccated green. It's not an extract. It's not a supplement. It is ground up, basically, healthy superfoods, fruits, and vegetables, picked on purpose for specific vital organ functioning, specific nutrients, and it's healthy and it's wonderful. Made in America, USDA organic, and helps good with the heart, good with the liver, good with the kidneys, good for the metabolism, immune. Go to fieldofgreens.com. Promo code VIVA will get you. I don't want to oversell it. What is it? 15% off? Son of a beasting. It's 15% off your order. Check it out, Field of Greens. And last and certainly not least, everybody, you have to take care of your body and you have to take care of your pocketbook. Now, hold up. Let's bring it up here. Monetary gold, people. It is no secret that we're living in uncertain and volatile times. The dollar is collapsing and faith in our monetary system is at an all-time low while inflation is skyrocketing. No one has a crystal ball when it comes to the future, but one thing is for certain, gold has historically done better than everything else, maybe with the exception of Bitcoin, but I'm not sure about that. I give myself financial insurance by investing in hard physical assets like gold and silver. Historically, gold and silver have been one of the safest investments, and it allows me to hedge my bets against runaway inflation. I urge you to take a closer look, protecting your ass and your assets by investing in physical gold. Monetary gold, they're legit. They'll take care of you. You can move your IRA into gold and silver. Just tell them I sent you. For a limited time, they're going to give up to $5,000 for free gold and silver for qualified purchases. Sleep well at night knowing that you're protected. Give Monetary Gold a call now. 800-476-1303. 800-476-1303. Or visit monetarygold.com. Barnes is in the house. Robert,
I came in on listening, hearing about gold.
What, Robert, I'd say hard gold. You said something during one of our streams in terms of you can put your gold in a vault at a bank, but we now know because of the cases that we've covered, it's not safe there. You can get a vault and put it in your house, but we know that if anyone ever breaks in, that's the first place they go. And good luck saying I don't have the keys for it. What was your advice? I remember it, but remind the world what your advice was.
Remind me.
It was hiding it in what is it called?
That's true for anything, cash, etc. That you hide it in places no one would look. So like, VCRs that don't work anymore. Like nobody's going to rob the VCR. Nobody's going to inspect the VCR. They don't think that. Things like that are the most effective places to store things if you need immediate access to it. It's also always good to have things accessible at a location nobody knows about. So that's always advisable in general.
There is a shocking amount of gold that was buried by people back in the day that they die. The family doesn't know about it. And these are like what people discover with metal detectors. It's been a dream of mine to discover that, but
you could hide it so well, like Pablo Escobar with, that he hid gold, jewels, money all around Colombia, and people have never been able to his own family couldn't find it after he got whacked. So it was never discovered, at least to anybody's knowledge. Of course, if somebody did discover it, it's not like they're going to advertise it.
Robert, what's the book behind you? What's the cigar in your hand?
Yeah, the book is called Liberty and Power by Harry Watson. Someone had asked in our replies earlier at vivabarneslaw.locals.com about what are some good books about Andrew Jackson and the great success he had for working class Americans. And that's a great one. Liberty and Power by Harry Watson. Excellent book about the success of the Jacksonian Revolution for many working class people in the country, the most prosperous and equal access to political power they had ever had up to that point.
And the cigar?
Monte Cristo.
Okay, Robert, now, we have our subject. Tell us what the subjects are, but we have to start with one that just occurred over the weekend.
All right, yeah, we have can Tim Pool sue the Kamala Harris campaign for libeling Tim Pool and their obsession over Project 2025. We have a couple of big cases, election cases out of the state of Pennsylvania from the same court that the Amos Miller case is pending in. And we have an update on part of that Amos Miller case pending before the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania. It may not surprise people on those election cases which Democratic judge was specially assigned to help handle those cases. Might relate to a judge that I'm looking at suing for illegally imprisoning farm workers in Pennsylvania. We have Trump seeking, we discussed last couple of weeks, how can you remove a state criminal case to federal court? I think some smart people were listening and are seeking to remove the Trump New York case to federal court. Now, they may have some hurdles with the politically motivated judge in that case, but I think they have sound constitutional grounds, despite what Norm Eisen may be saying. We have in Brazil, they're threatening Elon Musk and banning X by the lunatic judge, Voldemort-looking judge there from in the country of Brazil, as well as other threats, with the Durov, with the Telegram CEO, Robert Reich calling for the European governments to try to arrest Elon Musk. Threats that, the Rumble CEO, Chris Pavlovsky, is detailed. And that we have the New York Times saying the biggest problem with America is that gosh darn Constitution. It poses too many risks to us Americans these days. Tommy Robinson facing another wave of politically motivated prosecutions in Britain. When is Uber liable for an assault on one of its own drivers? What about when schools get your kid convinced that they're not really a man or a woman? Do they have to tell you, or can they keep it a secret? We have a new court in Texas that should be a model for a lot of other states across the country. It's something that some of us have been calling for years, and we'll see. And already the liberals are up in arms as they finally figured out the impact that court may have. We got the update in Amos Miller. When can you get bail for probation? Apparently, I'm discovering all kinds of things about Pennsylvania. There in the county in Pennsylvania, they impose ridiculous conditions of probation, number one. And number two, they believe you can't get bail pending appeal if you're in probation. They don't think that's custody. Apparently, they haven't studied what the definition of custodial status is, which impacts a lot of other rights as well, Fifth Amendment rights and so forth. When do you have the right to record and broadcast what the heck's happening in courtrooms? Here again, Pennsylvania is the front line, but it's not the only one. The issue has come up in, what about the right to rebroadcast court proceedings? How is it that all these courts, they'll broadly say you have a right to free speech and free expression that other politicians can't prohibit, unless it's them. Then they can ban what gets published and broadcast about what they are up to. It's one of the flaws, frankly, in our system where the tripartite system of governance falls apart. What if you're a hard-working strip club owner and somebody has this similar trademark as you all the way across the country? Is Foxy Lady really so unique to the strip club in Rhode Island that it's having to sue everybody that's using the words Foxy Lady elsewhere in the country? The limits of trademark law. Do you own your own downloads? People have been figuring out that Apple and Amazon, after you pay to buy what they say is buying the video or buying music or buying a TV show or movie or book, suddenly you can disappear from your account. That has led to a lawsuit about whether all these big tech companies are engaged in mass consumer deception and fraud. And then we got some of the questions that were the tipped or most liked questions earlier. John Jay is talking about Christianity and early Christianity in the early Republic. What about cameras at drop boxes? What about DAs? Can they prosecute for some of this censorship? What about dental services now trying to deny you care based on some aspect of your medical status? What's happening in Pennsylvania on elections and signature matches? And are they really preparing Rikers for Trump?
Robert, Gandalf FL the fourth, or is that Gandalf Florida the or Gandalf Live is now a monthly subscriber. Welcome to the channel. We got to start with one that was not on the menu, a little lighthearted, and I saw you taking the what is the word, the unpasteurized piss out of Matt Walsh. Look, I know that you know this better than I do, but I know what I understand. Raw milk is disgusting, he says. We live in a first world civilized society and people are actively choosing to consume milk riddled with E. coli and listeria. Pasteurization is not some evil sorcery. It just kills the most dangerous bacteria. Robert, he's been taking a lot of crap for this. I say rightly so.
He's dumb as a doorknob.
I think he meant it somewhat lightheartedly. Then everyone has to double down.
No, he's obsessed with it. This is a guy who thinks video games are the great threat to humanity. Right? I mean, people ask why I don't take the Daily Wire seriously. Go back and look at Matt Walsh's 2016 Twitter account. He obsessively hated Trump and Trump supporters. He was a core never Trumper, like Ben Shapiro and pretty much everybody at the Daily Wire was. So when the rubber hits the road, these guys run the wrong direction. So but what's extraordinary to me is, and I'll get answers like these overconfident, cocky responses that sound like they work for the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, where these people think they know something and they don't know it at all. So, for example, is unpasteurized milk full of E. coli? No, according to the government's own data, they don't have anyone that's died in 25 years from raw milk, period. E. coli or anything else, full of listeria, hogwash, complete garbage. He thinks, pasteurized milk only gets rid of the bad bacteria. Actually gets rid of the good bacteria. It gets rid of a bunch of things that are good for your gut. This is something we've been living on for centuries. And people, imagine being so suckered by propaganda. And this is a guy who pretends to be part of independent media. And here he is regurgitating some of the dumbest propaganda on the planet. It's what in the Amos Miller case they were relying on. They were relying on the judges to share the same prejudices from decades of being taught the wrong information by the government about our food supply and public health. It's why it's so important and significant, Robert Kennedy's alliance with President Trump in this campaign to make America healthy again. I mean, now a bunch of Americans have figured this out. Anybody that's ever really researched this topic universally concludes that raw milk presents no unique risks of any kind. That, in fact, when they've done the detailed surveys and been subject to the crucible of cross-examination, as Peg Coleman, Margaret Coleman, was as the witness in the Amos Miller case, who had previously worked for the Food and Drug Administration, was someone who was intimately aware of has been studying this issue for more than a quarter century. And what she found is that once you got through all the different ways they had tried to doctor the surveys and doctor the studies and manipulate the data, that in fact, when you do an honest, independent inquiry, you find out that pasteurized milk causes more health problems than raw milk does. And I mean direct health problems. I'm not even dealing with the indirect health problems, which are extensive and expansive. I'm talking about people drink it, getting sick, people drinking it, dying. You're at higher risk of that occurring from pasteurized milk than you are from raw milk. This is because people don't understand how food works. They don't understand how bacteria works. They don't understand the real history of what happened particularly with milk. With a lot of things related to milk, it's very similar to what happened with vaccines. They took credit they claimed pasteurization fixed things that pasteurization had nothing to do with. Just like they claim vaccines fixed a bunch of diseases that actually have nothing to do with when you actually study the history. So it's amazing that somebody is so cocky in reporting it and repeating something that's so wrong. That, the only person that was a meaningful expert that I've known that's testified in court in the last quarter century is Margaret Coleman, subject to the government's cross-examination. They couldn't punch a single hole in a single aspect of her testimony. Anybody that's ever drank raw milk, almost all these people have never drank it at all. So they have no idea what they're talking about. But they've never studied it in any meaningful detail. They don't apply basic common sense. I mean, all we have to do is step back and ask ourselves, does a corporatized, industrialized, mechanized food supply make us healthier? Does that even make sense? But of course, we don't have to guess. We can just look at what's happened over the last half century. Chronic disease has exploded in the United States. We have the least amount of direct access to farm-to-table food in the world. And guess what? We're the least healthy in the world. And this is people are surprised that how resonant Robert Kennedy's message is on these topics that make America healthy again got viral right away. It's because ordinary people have been experiencing this now for 50 years. They've seen what's happened to them. They've seen what's happened to their children. They've seen what's happened to their loved ones. They've seen what's happened to their own bodies. We were taken for a ride by the government, their bogus food pyramid. That was basically corporate food supply, corporate food supply, corporate food supply, corporate food supply. And, inundated with chemicals they created out of a lab in New Jersey that are laced in a lot of your food products. And so it's that core misinformation that they've been feeding off of and feeding us into for decades that is fueling large parts of the Robert Kennedy movement that's now fueling President Trump's campaign and his continued surge and boost. But it's just like even Dr. Drew is this way. He was like, oh, I don't know if I would want to drink raw milk. And it's like, wow. So he's bought all the, bogus interpretations out there that this is not, it's a little tricky to research because the official government narrative is always bad, bad, bad. But notice the language they'll use. They'll use something like raw milk can have things that are in all food products.
Well, and not just that, but I'm just pulling it up while you're talking just to show people like, okay, fine. There's been 20, 30 cases that they've linked to raw milk. There was allegedly one death that they linked to it. I pulled it up for those who are listening in podcasts.
And the death we
broccoli,
just heard, by the way, in court.
Yeah,
Because you dug in and it turned out the death that they attributed to raw milk, they attributed to listeria in the patient. Problem was the listeria was there a year before when she hadn't drank any raw milk. And she died, by the way, of fourth stage cancer. I mean, this is why they use these kind of phrases. This is the reason why the government doesn't want any meaningful trial. That's why in Amos Miller case, they're obsessed with shutting it down without a trial. having him prohibited from operating before he gets a chance to have a full day in court, because they can't hold up. When the FDA was sued, they walked away from all this. Thomas Massey, a real farmer, unlike Matt Walsh, he only farms for clicks. Massey, a real farmer, real congressman who's researched this issue in great detail, has been talking about it for a long time. Anybody that's experienced raw milk, grew up around raw milk, it's real milk. It's natural milk. It's not milk that has been changed or adulterated, which is what pasteurized milk and every other form of almond milk and some of these other things are. Maybe in soy milk is Matt Walsh's idea of a healthy diet, but for the rest of us, give us milk right from the cow, and it's fantastic. But it's just striking the arrogance combined with ignorance of people like Matt Walsh, and it's commonplace throughout the professional managerial class. It's why we're in the problems we're in. It's why he reacted to Trump the way he did. They thought all their prejudices and bigotries were absolutely right. And they're absolutely wrong. It's why I have a problem with I'm part of the professional managerial class, but having been part of it, they're the last people on the planet I would want to govern anything. Your business, your life, your family, society, politics, you name it. They're an incompetent breed of people who are whose arrogance always exceeds their intelligence. And it's what makes them dangerous. Going around telling the world, you have to be a moron. I have an IQ of 85 in order to believe that raw milk could be good for you. You're just showing how stupid you are, Matt. I mean, it's an embarrassment. I mean, it was almost as embarrassing. But, we'll discuss part of we're going to do a special Labor Day version of What Are the Odds with Richard Barris, People's Pundit Daily, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. It'll be the last one for a couple of weeks because I have trials coming up. But we're going to discuss the politics of pot, the politics of abortion, the politics of food, and the way these issues shape up, and why Trump is taking the balanced position on a lot of these issues that he is. But these people it's just
I did an informal poll on my Twitter feed, which is, I would dare say, mostly conservative, and 65% of the 20,000 people said they support legalizing marijuana. Then you compare that to, not to name any names, but people who say it's terrible, he's betraying the drug thing. Then you got the Lila Roses about the abortion issue, taking positions that even the vast majority on the conservative side are not aligned with. And I also just wanted to show, if Matt Walsh is afraid of E. coli, you never eat broccoli again. You never eat alfalfa sprouts again, because those are the things lead to death.
Exactly. But leafy vegetables are the number one source of food illness. It's what they've done is the state has colluded with the big ag, the big corporations, to deceive people into believing only government approved, corporate backed food is safe, when all of the empirical evidence, your own eyes from your lived experience, tells you it's not. Because they have come to dominate the food supply in just 2 decades, and during that time period, we've become the most unhealthy people on the planet. So, and there's a clear correlation. You have the pharmaceutical attribute as well, but we've made our kids incredibly sick. What do you have to be hit in the face with before you realize how stupid it is to continue to believe corporate propaganda and government propaganda that their food supply is safer than what we used to have? You think your grandparents had a worse food supply than we got?
People will say life expectancy.
We didn't have a chronic. Where were all the chronic diseases? Why did we have almost none of them 60 years ago, 70 years ago?
Like, not to play devil's advocate, they'll say that the life expectancy 100 years ago was much shorter, so you didn't have chronic diseases, but you didn't have the same life.
Chronic diseases for kids, for children, we're talking about. It's an explosion of chronic disease in children. Life expectancy doesn't explain that. Life expectancy could explain the rise of cancer rates, but life expectancy can't explain the rise of cancer rates in kids. They can't explain the rise of autism in kids. Can't explain the rise of a whole bunch of chronic. We have 60 plus chronic diseases now. Most of the country, most kids have at least one chronic disease. At least one. This is insane. And yet idiots like Matt Walsh think gender identity politics is the only thing that matters. And he wonders why Bushite republicanism isn't popular. These people that are these sort of boomer con perspective is utterly out of touch with the world. But when Richard Barris polled the topic, he was shocked at how deeply popular food freedom is about having direct access to farmer-produced food is for people all across the country. But there's a reason they go to farmers markets. There's a reason why farmers markets are intensely popular, because they figured it out. They figured out that this government corporate crap is killing my kid. It's killing us, and I don't want it. It makes us miserable, makes us unhappy, has a whole bunch of other negative side effects as well. And the only people who still haven't figured it out is the political class. It's the judges, it's the lawyers, it's the legislators. They're the ones who don't get it, don't understand. There's a reason why when raw milk goes through legislative review in the last 20 years in over 40 states, they end up legalizing more access to it. Why is that? It's because they get all the evidence, all the information, and they're usually all shocked when the information shows, oh, hold on a second. It turns out that drinking the same milk our ancestors drank for centuries is actually pretty good for you. And that doing what you do with pasteurization, which removes a lot of the benefits of milk, and the taste, by the way, ends up reducing the interest in milk and ends up reducing the health quality of milk. This is
Dr. Simon Godek, who just did an expose, seemingly, what's the word? Exposing the Krasenstein brothers as being less than savory characters. I'm going to have him on Tuesday, so stay tuned for that. But he's an actual scientist, and he's a smart guy at that. The graphic below is exactly why I stick to raw milk. If your microbiome is in good shape, consuming a few bad bacteria shouldn't be a problem. And then he goes through all of the fatty acids, proteins, whatever that get killed when you pasteurize milk, which is why French cheese tastes better. It's why pasteurized orange juice tastes like crap.
I mean, throughout Europe, this is commonplace. I mean, that's the extraordinary thing is like even government-happy societies like Europe are more attuned to good food than we are in the United States. It was one of the points Robert Kennedy made. He goes, there's companies in Denmark that make certain drugs that in Denmark, they don't recommend for their own people. They just have us be the guinea pigs here in America. And it's just incredible. But I mean, it's Walz repeating and regurgitating this utterly false information and doing it from a place of contemptuous arrogance of anyone who disagreed shows the problem in the methods of information gathering and communication that the Daily Wire crowd routinely runs afoul of. And that the institutional right, because they're so corporatist and often statist in their approach, often goes AWOL with. Imagine, not to trust these kind of government sources for things like whether or not someone's a man or a woman. But suddenly you turn around and trust them, classic Gellerman amnesia, as termed by Michael Crichton. You immediately trust them when it comes to milk, even though it betrays every form of common sense and historical knowledge and personal experience that everybody out there has. It just shows that's not someone you could ever trust on anything. Because his method of learning is bad. His method of understanding things is bad. You can't trust somebody like that. Matt Walsh is just untrustworthy across the board. Too dumb to count on.
Well, speaking of, I don't know if we'll need to get into the stolen valor, Tim Walz stuff. But let's do the two big ones that I think people want to hear before we head over to Rumble. Let's start with Trump, because I put the reminder announcement for tonight's vlog or tonight's stream was the breakdown of the son of a gun, the superseding indictment. For those who don't know, Jack Smith, I don't know if he's a mercenary so much or a hitman, one or the other. Jack Smith filed a superseding indictment, which reduces the scope of the original indictment. It's submitted to a new grand jury, so it's not tainted by whatever the initial grand jury heard. It eliminates some of the defendants, it eliminates some of the allegations, eliminates some of the evidence so that it should be compliant in theory with the Supreme Court's ruling on immunity. When I posted this on Twitter, someone said that he wasn't even supposed to submit a superseding indictment. There were pending motions on the existing indictment as to what would need to be struck and what would need to be, or what would be allowed to be kept in. And I didn't have any knowledge of that. I just know that this superseding indictment has basically, as far, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, elaborate if it's not wrong. Basically, starting from scratch, there's no chance any of this goes anywhere before the election. But now they get to drag this thing through the election, drag this thing through if Trump wins, that interim period until the transfer of power. And then it's a question of what happens if, and touch wood, Trump wins the election. First question, though, did Jack Smith pull a fast one by filing or getting this superseding indictment instead of dealing with the indictment that he had already filed in light of the Supreme Court ruling?
I think the only reason he did a superseding indictment wasn't to escape a motion to dismiss on the existing indictment, since certain parts of it clearly ran afoul. It was to primarily delay any dismissal order or decision until after the election. So, yes, you're exactly right. The goal is to drag this out, continue to try to shame Trump in the court of public opinion, and preclude a dismissal from a higher court, like the Supreme Court potentially, before Election Day. And so they want this hanging over Trump during the election, knowing that in all likelihood, Jack Smith is not constitutionally authorized. That has to be dealt with at some point. One federal judge has already ruled he's not constitutionally authorized to even exist to do any of this.
May I pause you there? The circuit that's going to deal with Eileen Cannon's dismissal for Jack Smith lacking, not standing, but lacking authority, does that circuit also include DC?
No, but are they going to disagree? I mean, that's the problem. So the judge could disagree, and then that creates an issue for the Supreme Court to resolve. So either way, this case was never reaching trial. And he just wanted to make sure there wasn't a dismissal order he knows the district court's in his pocket and the DC Court of Appeals in his pocket. His concern was the Supreme Court stepping in and dismissing the entire case on either the Cannon theory or the theory they just articulated prior to Election Day. That would be politically embarrassing to the Biden administration and boost Trump. So they don't want that to occur. So that's what this superseding indictment is all about. It does not escape the problems that he has no such authority. It does not escape the problem that they already gathered evidence in violation of the immunity and submitted it to a grand jury previously in violation of immunity. It doesn't change. The indictment itself still has things in it that are clearly prohibited under the immunity interpretation given by the Supreme Court just this past year. So it's why they've now, all the Trump haters have now put all of their eggs in only one basket.
New York sentencing. One quick question: double jeopardy does not attach because there had been no jury impaneled. That doesn't apply to a grand jury.
No.
Okay, so that answers the question for the DC case and to some extent the Florida case, which dismissed it, and now Jack Smith has to deal with whether or not he has authority under the that's the classified documents case. September, what is the date for the sentencing? It's not this week, but next in New York. People are still taking bets. Is he going to get sentenced? Whatever. Is the Trump team looking to try to move that criminal case out of the state of New York to the federal court?
Yeah, they filed, in fact, their notice of removal. So the notice of removal, the way it's supposed to work, the fact that you filed a prior notice of removal does not, despite what some idiots on law Twitter were saying, they're like, oh, that's res judicata, that's collateral estoppel. If you want to see just how ideologically corrupt the legal academy is, look no further than Norm Eisen. This is a guy who's been promoted as a potential Supreme Court nominee by the left. Look at him or Lawrence Tribe. They have said some of the dumbest, craziest, most ludicrous interpretations of the law that are basically false, that would fail you as a first-year law student out of class and out of school because they obsessively hate Trump so much. And this is the problem with the professional class whose political prejudice they pretend they don't have and who believe, like the Matt Walshes of the world, that their information is because they're intelligent and they're smarter than the rest of us. No, they're not. They're just more corrupt than the rest of us. They're less self-aware than the rest of us. This is what makes the professional managerial class so dangerous as a group of people to have real power. They've proven that for a century. Dig into fascism and you figure out who runs it. It was the professional managerial class. Dig into communism and who managed it. It's the professional managerial class. Look into everything that's gone wrong in American government or EU government. You will find the professional managerial class behind it because they tend to be arrogant, entitled. Imagine like the worst version of a spoiled brat rich kid and then give them power. And there are people that, were born on third base, end up on second base and think they hit a double. They've created the worst combination of traits, the professional managerial class you could possibly have for making decisions that could impact others. But Eisen, for example, goes through and says, oh, it's a collateral estoppel. You sought removal before and it was denied. That's not collateral estoppel, you nitwit. So for the way removal works is they can deny it. You can keep filing it when any incident happens that triggers your right to remove. And there's a reason why we were talking about it in other cases that I'm dealing with for the last several weeks, because it was clearly applicable to Trump's case. And I'm glad Trump's people went back and revisited it, and they did, and they filed their removal. Now, the issue is the prior judge they got assigned was this old Clinton judge whose prior ruling has now been effectively overturned by the Supreme Court, because what he said was this case could not impact any issue of official duty. Well, it did, according to the Supreme Court of the United States, by the evidence presented at trial. So that corrupt Clinton appointee in New York, of which there are many there in the Southern District of New York, got it dead wrong. So that by itself was grounds to seek removal. And the second issue, the what they're really going to rely upon, and by this is what all law Twitter is doing, they're giving a roadmap for the lefty law clerks for these judges to follow. They're doing de facto amicus briefs explaining to the prosecutors who aren't sophisticated enough to make these arguments, and to the clerks who aren't familiar enough with the law to make these arguments, what arguments to make. So you follow the Norm Eisens of the world, and they're effectively, that's who they're doing it, and they're telling them why to do it. By the way, Norm Eisen fully discloses why this is. He says the removal has got to be rejected, and Trump has to be sentenced because it will be the deciding factor in the election. The way he pretends that that's not his motivation is he says, oh, that's Trump's motivation. Trump's motivation is to avoid consequences so he can still win the election. Not me, Norm. I'm not butchering and bastardizing American law and whoring it and harloting it out in order to empower my political side. No, I would never be part of that. I mean, and Norm Eisen is completely for sale. I mean, he's represented human traffickers. He's represented child labor people. He's represented some of the worst human beings on the planet, and not for constitutional cause, because they wrote a fat check. That's who Norm Eisen is. The people on the left who've told me to like him for years, it's like now I get to say this guy's a disgrace. He's a disgrace.
Let me bring up Lawrence Tribe was one of the two. It was him and the other judge, I think, I forget his name, a so-called conservative judge, who floated who put forward the 14th Amendment Section 3 exclusion. A second Trump term would be a nonstop coup against the Constitution that Trump promised to terminate. All this guy does is lie. I looked up all my tweets or reply. All he does is lie. It's what Section 3 of the 14th Amendment was designed to prevent by disqualifying those who swear to support the Constitution but then trash it, says the guy trying to trash the Constitution. But in fairness, he never swore to uphold it, so good for him.
So there's no collateral estoppel. That's not how removal works. You get to file it. If the court denies it, then often, now in immunity case, you're supposed to have a right of appeal. It gets tricky whether you have a right of appeal. But in my view, he would. So, but what it's not res judicata or collateral estoppel. One. Number two, it couldn't be because this judge was wrong on the law anyway. Res judicata and collateral estoppel is factual determination made by a fact finder after a presentation of actual evidence. It's not legal interpretation of the law. That's precedent, and either it's controlling or it's not. And in this case, the judge got it wrong. But the second issue, the main issue they're going to argue is they're going to argue the variations of abstention. And I have long abstention is excuse number 293 why federal judges get to be lazy and not do their job and uphold the Constitution. Like standing, like mootness, like rightness, like latches. We have an example of that we'll be talking about in the Pennsylvania courts about the election dispute, excluding Cornel West from the ballot. It's an excuse. It's another Pontius Pilate pretext for them not to do their job. And in this case, Younger is one of the various forms of abstention that even when scholars study it, they can't come to the conclusion as to why there's any intellectual basis for it. What's clear is the Supreme Court, when they created it, flat out lied about the history. They've done this a lot in this context. What it really is federal judges not wanting to step on the shoes of state judges. That's it. That's all it is. In fact, there's a long history. In fact, the duty of federal courts, the duty of the Federal Civil Rights Act the number one target were law enforcement and judges, because the number one people violating civil rights in the post-Civil War South were judges. And they were the ones who were not supposed to be immune from suit. And they were the ones who were supposed to be enjoined when they wouldn't enforce the Constitution. But so now the rule is, so the general presumption is when you try to sue about a pending criminal prosecution, is the federal courts have to say, oh, no, we must abstain. The state courts can handle it. We can't get involved. It's extraordinary. The only reason they exist is to enforce the Constitution against state governments, quite frankly. Otherwise, we really don't need federal courts. I mean, they're there when your constitutional rights cannot be adequately protected. Diversity jurisdiction exists because they distrust a state court to protect the rights of a non-resident. And that's what that is all about. That's what the whole history of it is about. So but even the younger abstention courts recognize that if you can show that the state court is not a competent, unbiased court that can give a full, fair adjudication of the underlying issues of federal constitutional issues, then they cannot abstain and they must assert jurisdiction over the case. Here, and this is why, by the way, the timing for removal, an issue I'm currently litigating for the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, is not a strict 30-day rule. It's 30 days from the time you know the state court won't enforce your rights. It's not from the 30 days from the time you know a federal constitutional issue might be involved in the case. And here, they have they have constantly sought recusal and disqualification of this judge because he's personally conflicted and compromised by his family's financial self-enrichment off of this case. He's a disgrace to the bench. He's a disgrace to the rule of law. And that by itself, by the way, the Supreme Court has recognized is grounds to federally remove a state case.
Different than recusal, because he obviously will not recuse himself for all of the reasons you stated. But how does a federal court, when asked for removal to the federal court, not look at that or deal with it if they view it as a second kick at the can for recusal or a bypassing of recusal?
It doesn't matter whether it's second kick at the can. What matters is you have to look at it anew. The court can say it wants to make the same decision it made before, but the facts are different and the law is different. The law is different because when that judge said this couldn't possibly impact federal immunity, he was wrong. He got overturned by the Supreme Court, and that's actual precedent, unlike his prior decision. So part one is he was wrong on the law. There's now no dispute the case concerns issues of federal law. There's no dispute the question concerns issues of federal immunity. There's no dispute the issue concerns questions that arose from performance of your duties as a federal official, because evidence was presented concerning it at trial that was key to conviction. So that's the problem he has, is he was dead wrong. Now, he's such a Clinton hack. He'll pretend that he's not. He'll say something arrogant and stupid. And the point is, get it up into the Second Circuit, get it up to the Supreme Court of the United States. Don't wait on bail as the sole remedy in case this judge goes nuts. Mm-hmm. And so the second component of that is that under younger abstention is that first he has that real official immunity as a federal officer is now clearly in play according to the Supreme Court's precedent, reversing his prior decision, which means federal courts should have asserted jurisdiction under the law. But secondly, the state court is not capable of competently enforcing federal constitutional rights, which include a right to an impartial jurist. So that it includes the right to an impartial jury. This judge has proven him incapable of doing so, and it has compromised his ability to enforce the law, which he has failed to do so. Here's the other aspect that some of us have been wanting to challenge for a long time. These abstention doctrines are bogus doctrines. They're made up Pontius Pilate doctrines to have a pretext to avoid judgment when it's a politically controversial case. The only reason federal judges even exist is to handle constitutionally controversial cases. It's the very kind of case they run from whenever they can, if it means stepping on the foot of people with real power. But they've now done, this comes from the University of Wisconsin School of Thought when I went to law school there, which was the law in action idea, which was you should not just study the black letter law, but the philosophical ideals that create that law and the practical social reality of how that law is represented and enforced. Well, we now have the data. These federal judges for 30 years have been saying, oh, these state courts are totally capable and competent. of providing a fair and independent forum for enforcing federal constitutional rights. Well, guess what they've got to compare? When federal courts have not sent it back, and looking at all the history when they didn't even send it back at all to state courts, almost half the time the challenger succeeded on the unconstitutionality of what the state was doing. By contrast, the success rate in state courts have proven themselves incapable as a group of enforcing federal constitutional rights. More than 85% of the time, the state courts won't enforce the federal constitutional right. So it's now proven with actual data and information from empirical evidence that the federal court's assumptions that the state courts will enforce the constitutional rights of an individual when it's a federal issue is complete garbage. As such, the very premise of abstention should be challenged, and I hope the Trump team challenges that as well in the context of this case.
All right, well, you look no further than Dexter Taylor, where Judge Darkey said there's no don't bring the Second Amendment into this court. There's no Second Amendment in the state of New York. The question that I was going to ask, the time frame within which, so sentencing is whatever pending motion for removal to federal court will not be heard before the sentencing is supposed to occur.
Technically, what's supposed to happen is upon the notice of removal, it's supposed to stay the state case. Now they interpret this particular method of removal as not requiring a stay of the state case.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, a removal does do that. They have an interpretation as to why this kind of removal doesn't automatically trigger it. But if the state court judge cares at all about the appearance of impartiality, he will continue the scheduling date until after the federal court can rule on the matter. The main pressure against him now is from the Norm Eisens of the world, the law Twitter of the left, demanding that they think their only way of beating Trump is for him to sentence Trump to prison on early September. They believe that the American people will abandon Trump when that happens. So that's why there's talk of the National Guard in New York and them preparing a huge section of Rikers for Trump and National Guard because they're afraid of massive disturbances. So that's why that's going that route, is the left thinks that, okay, they thought indicting Trump would sink him, and it actually helped him. Well, then they're like, oh, okay, it must be we got to get him convicted. Then they get him convicted, and it helps him again. So these group of geniuses are like, oh, he hasn't been sentenced. Nobody takes it seriously because he hasn't been sentenced. If he's sentenced, if he's put in the prison robes, if he's put on the bus to Rikers Island, then the American people will reject him. No, they'll reject you, Norm. They'll want to lynch your ass, Norm. That's what they'll want to do. These people are insane. They're endangering the country. They're endangering the republic, endangering the Constitution, like the New York Times is bragging about. And they don't understand what they are unleashing. They don't understand what they are risking. Americans' confidence in our legal system is collapsing by the day, and they want to completely crush it because they care more about their little power than they ever cared about the rule of law. In an honest legal system, it wouldn't be Rudy Giuliani being disbarred. It'd be Norm Eisen being disbarred and then imprisoned for endangering the civil rights and civil liberties of Americans. That this is how crazy these people are. But I can tell you what will happen. If they send Trump to Rikers, Trump will win in a bigger landslide even more. And the power of these people will be gone and gone forever. So be careful what you wish for.
Before we head over to Rumble exclusively, because I can't seem to get all of the super chats from Rumble, let me read these real quick. Old Guy's Opinion says, so according to Matt Walsh, before pasteurization, everyone living today should be extinct because of raw milk and goat milk. I don't want to go down too fast and scroll past. We got one Old Guy's Opinion. $20 says, Matt Walsh is the millennials. What is that? 1981, okay, he isn't stupid, just indoctrinated. I can feel for Matt. Look, I'm still neurotic about the fears of unpasteurized stuff because I was brought up with that, but I know it's wrong. I just don't like milk, period. But I've never tasted.
The difference is the arrogance, right? It's like if you're going to go out there and attack a bunch of people, at least investigate and do meaningful research and study both. But this is typical of the professional class. They never do this. They just assume whatever propaganda they received is absolutely true.
No, and then you got
to credit to people like Nicole Shanahan, right? Nicole Shanahan's putting out great ads for Trump. And this is someone who a year ago believed everything bad about Trump. She herself has said, she had TDS. She put in an ad. She did an ad about TDS, which Trump is taking to a new level. Because he's saying, have you heard of TDS? Yeah, it rots the brain and it damages the body. It's causing all kinds of health problems in America.
It's fantastic. One old guy's opinion says, Timothy the tampon no balls Walz, a real American zero. Okay, that's not bad. I'm from Denmark, and we are big consumers of all organic meat, fruit, vegetables, etc. That is John Benson. And then I think we're going to be good by going all the way down. All right, that's good. What we're going to do now, the link to Rumble is in the pinned comment. I'm going to get to the Rumble rants in a bit. We're going to now vote with our eyes, vote with our feet, vote with our dollars, vote with our attention spans, and bring this over to, how do I do it here? Rumble and locals. So we're going to end it on YouTube and Twitter, and I'll post the entire podcast in audio form to Viva and Barnes Law for the People on Podbean. I'll upload the entire stream to Viva Clips and the entire stream to Twitter tomorrow. But right now we are going to go support the free speech platform and our friends in the war against the tyrants. Rumble right now. I think it gives us 30 seconds, but if it doesn't, come on over there. The link is there, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Bada bing.